So thanks so much today. We're going to be talking about getting started with voice apps. And for everyone that's in the audience, hopefully by the end of this, you'll get a good understanding of how to get started and what are some of the things that you might be able to do in the platform, especially as we go into the next year, what you might be wanting to create. So today, welcome for everyone that is a new face. We are Voiceflow, an easy way for people to design, prototype, and build voice apps with little to no code. And ultimately, our goal is to make it easier than ever to prototype and be able to launch these ideas, especially as voice continues to take off as an interface. Ultimately, trying to make sure that we can democratize conversation design and development for just about everyone. In this series, we cover a bunch of different topics, from interviewing thought leaders to highlighting creators and their stories and connecting business minds and futurists, ultimately so that we can grow with this amazing community of voice enthusiasts. So with that, let's get started. Today's host is Rob Hayes, head of product at Voiceflow, and we also have some great moderators in the audience as well, including myself, as well as Braden, the CEO. So we'll be here to answer any questions that you have. So feel free to take advantage of that Q&A section at the bottom, and feel free to reach out afterwards if you have any particular questions. So with that, I'm going to pass over the reins to Rob.
All right. Let's see. Can you enable the, oh, I'm now the co-host. Yay. All right. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, you can.
Yes. And it's the one with Voiceflow open?
Yes.
All right.
And your to-do.
And my to-do list. Ah, wonderful. Well, that's a great segue. Thanks everyone for joining in today. I appreciate that there's such interest in just kind of getting up and running with Voiceflow and getting a sense of how you can build something functional, useful pretty quickly on Voiceflow, and hopefully you can follow along or just kind of even work along beside me as I run through this. And get your own app up and running. What I'd like to take us through, the example I'd like to take us through today is something I kind of want and needed myself as I'm spending more and more time working from home, in and around my home, never leaving my home. I always have thoughts that pass through my mind, to-dos for work, shopping list items, et cetera, and my phone is in another room, and so inevitably they just get forgotten. But I do have an Alexa or a Google in every room, so I thought it would be a fun project to show you how you can make a note-taking app that can run on your Alexa or your Google, and connect it to whatever note-taking or to-do list product that you use. I've got Todoist. We'll run through an example of that with Google Sheets, but generally the principle here can be applied across anything that has a Zapier connection. And so as part of the exercise of building this, I think it's what I'd like to kind of walk through is, what is the process of designing an Alexa skill or a Google Assistant? What's kind of like the linear path of evolution from idea to functioning app, and how do you make that happen with Voiceflow? And so hopefully you should be able to see this kind of evolve from a concept to a final testable product that we have that can actually be launched on Alexa by the end of this. So what I've done, just to kind of help contextualize it all, I've built out a template that it shows every single version of the experience that we'll kind of build through. I'm going to build it from scratch in a separate tab over here, just to kind of give you a sense of how it goes from scratch. But for anyone who's interested in having the template to follow along and maybe even try to build yourself, I will just drop this in the chat, and you can go ahead and download to the panelists and attendees. You can go ahead and download the project yourself if you already have a Voiceflow account. If you don't, it's free to sign up. You can go sign up and then use the follow along with this project. All right, cool. Let's get going here. So the starting point for any app or conversation really is just kind of understanding what are the interactions that you need to build for. You know, you think about it as conversation design because you're designing a conversation between a user and a computer, or a user and an interface. And so it's really important kind of out of the gates, before you drag a single block onto your canvas in Voiceflow, to understand, you know, what are all of the interactions in between the user and the skill, or their Alexa or their Google Home. No, Alexa. That are
I found on Wikipedia.
Stop.
Google Home is a smart
Alexa, stop.
developed by Google. It was announced in May 2016.
And so what you want to do is, you know, think through what a sample dialogue for that experience looks like. And what that's going to tell you is a number of things. But most importantly, what are the actions that this skill needs to complete for the user? What is the user intending to accomplish with this? And what information do you need, or does your skill need, in order to complete that for them? And so when we think about those two sides of things, you'll see how they come to life in this example dialogue that I've written here. So this is me imagining what the experience of talking to my Alexa to take a note would be. So, you know, I'm saying, hey there, can you please record something for me? Alexa says, sure thing. Is it a note or a to-do? So it wants to know what list to put this in for me. This is a to-do. All right, what do you want the note to say? I want to say, add Google Analytics to the new landing page on the website. And then the assistant, it's just reaffirming what it heard. Here's what I heard: add Google Analytics to the new landing page on the website. Is that correct? I say yes. And then they ask, would you like to categorize this to do? And I say yes, tag it with analytics. And then it says, okay, done. Do you want to mark this as a priority? And I think about it and I say, yes, it's a 4. Okay, I'm adding Google Analytics to your new landing page on the website, to your to-do list, tag with analytics, and a priority of 4. Do you want me to save this? Yes. All right, done. Would you like me to record anything else for you? No, thank you. So that conversation is absolute overkill in terms of what my desired interaction would be. But it's important for me to think through kind of the most verbose example of an interaction when I'm writing a sample dialogue, because it helps me figure out what are all of those, you know, what are all of those actions that I as the user want to get out of this, and then what are all the pieces of information that it needs to get to complete that action. And so I've gone ahead and kind of highlighted those 2 items here. And what that's going to define for us is kind of the base functional element of our skill, which is the interaction model. What are the intents, and what are the slots that we need to fill with those intents in order to complete those actions? So, you know, an intent is a desired action for a user, and a slot is a potentially mandatory value that needs to be provided with that intent in order to fulfill that intent. So, for example, if I wanted to say, hey, order me a pizza, my intent is order a pizza, but in order for Domino's to fulfill on that, they need to know what size of a pizza I want, what toppings of a pizza I want, what delivery method I want, what payment method I want for that. So the intent in that case is order pizza, and the slots that we need to fill are size, delivery type, toppings. In this case, in this sample dialog, the intents that I've outlined that came up here were, I want to record something. I want to categorize it. I want to confirm what was recorded. I want to prioritize it, and I want to save it. All of those are the intents that I have throughout this experience in order to get me to a successful outcome. And then from the systems perspective, or from your skills perspective, you need to fill in, well, I need to know what type of a note it is. I need to know what the note's going to say. I need to know what category it belongs to. I need to know what priority it is before I can properly save that. So we're going to use this as the framework for the skill that we're designing, and we can kind of jump right into that. So just kind of a quick overview for anyone who's absolutely fresh to Voiceflow here. What you're looking at here, there's kind of three main components that we'll be using from the tool today. The first is this big area right here. That is the canvas. This is where you design your experience. On my canvas, you'll see here's all the steps and blocks that I'm using to build my canvas. The steps themselves, these are essentially Lego pieces of functionality that you assemble and configure to create your end-to-end conversation experience. The second element on the canvas is I've got all this markup. You're not going to necessarily, you don't need that. I'm just using this to provide context about what you're seeing. If you go over into my blank template, obviously none of that is there, but it's a good method to add additional context to the designs you've got if you're sharing with stakeholders or teammates, or an audience like this. And so that's what all this markup is here for the purpose of. So once I have my sample dialog defined, what I'm going to want to do is just figure out what my happy path experience is for my skill here. And really, it's just I'm recreating this back and forth of interactions that exists in the sample dialog with functionality on the canvas. And I'm really just using two functions here that you can use to create kind of a basic back and forth conversation. They're the first two listed in the menu here. So a speak block, that is what the system is saying to the user. You might hear a reference to as a response or a system response, but really that's just like any verbal content that the system is saying back to the user. And then a choice block, which is it's an intent. A choice houses intents or multiple intents, and it just creates a very linear path where the user can only choose from the intents listed within this choice block. So if we want to kind of run through quickly how we'd rebuild this sample dialog. Siri, go away. This sample dialog from scratch. So every project, it starts with an invocation. That's your start block. You only have one start block in a project. This is going to tell you, what are you saying to Alexa to invoke your conversation in the first place? Invocation name, note taking. There we go. So if I say, Alexa, open Rob's note taking, then that's going to launch this skill. Now, going back to the sample dialog, we have the first thing. So that's my invocation there. Please record something for me. Then I'm going to say, sure thing. Is it a to-do or a note? A note or a to-do? And so that's what the system needs to say. So I'm going to drag in a speak block here. Sure. Is that a note or a to-do? Question mark. There we go. And within this block, you can really you can test out your experiences.
Sure. Is that a note or a to-do?
You can also customize the SSML of the response content that you've got here, of the speak content that you've got. So if you want to, set a different different cadence on items here. I can say sure really slow, so it makes it sound skeptical. I can change the voice on the step here if I want to.
Sure. Is that a note or a to-do?
And so you have the opportunity to really craft your system's content by using SSML. And that's really kind of that last layer of polish. Once you get the functional flow defined, the end-to-end experience built out, it's really making it sound as natural as you can by using the SSML that's available within the speak blocks here. So just going back to the build out, the system says, sure, is this a note or a to-do? Okay, so now we want to drag in a choice block because we need an input from the user. So there's two ways that we could approach this. We could define this as I want to take or I have an idea. Let's say an idea or a to-do. Sure, is that an idea or a to-do? An idea. And so I'm going to create an idea intent. You can create intents directly through the choice block. This is likely kind of your first pass on the V1 of your skill. You're likely to use choice blocks to create the majority of your intents. Down here in the bottom left corner, you can see your interaction model, and that will give you an overview of all of the intents you've created, all of the slots you've created as part of your project if you need to refer to them at a glance. So just going back to this, I'm creating the idea intent. What would a user say to trigger that intent? So this is what we refer to as utterances. What is the user going to say to your Alexa to actually indicate that they want to hit this idea intent? So I have an idea would be an obvious one. An idea, you can add as many variants as you want here. The more variants you add, the more helpful it is for testing, just because it gives you a broader range of utterances to match when you go through your prototype test. So I have an idea, idea. That should be good. Okay. And so is an idea or is it a to do? So I want to add a second choice here. And I'm going to call this one to do. And this is, I have a to do, or to do. All right. So that gives me a basic path here that I can follow. And the thing is, though, so this is a choice block that I wanted. That's one approach to how you could do the choice block. The second is I could just use a single intent for this instead of two and capture the type of choice they want to make as a slot so that I can use that information later on in my skill, because I'll be able to save that, whether it's an idea they've selected or a to-do that they want to add. Assuming that, like in my Todoist here, I've got a couple of lists. Some are just random thoughts, and others are immediate actions and to-dos that I need to act on. So getting this information is actually pretty useful. So I'm just going to go ahead and change this up, show you how we would do that. So I'm going to take again, I can take a choice, doesn't matter here. And I'm going to create a, what do we want? Content underscore type. And I have and then I'm going to add a slot in here. So you can create slots within the utterances on your choices here, on your intents within the choices. So I have a content underscore type. And so this is opening a slot editor, and that's allowing me to define what type of slot it is. So there's a lot of, Alexa provides a lot of built-in slots. So it's what category of information is this? they have a lot of pre-built lists that have, all the potential or the majority of potential examples for those categories. For example, if you're asking for an airport or a color or a language, you'd want to use one of the pre-built slots. It simplifies things, and it saves you from having to define every possible answer. For this, we're going to use a custom slot because there's just 2 values and none of the pre-built categories are going to cover off what those values are. So for this, I'm going to say the first one is to do, and then you can add synonyms. So if people say something else, but they're intending to do, say they say task or to do's, for example, it will also capture those as the to-do slot. Similarly, idea, let's say note, ideas, etc., etc. And then now, when we go to the next, turn in the conversation. So the system's going to say, okay, what do you want it to say? We can actually use the type, the content type that we just captured in this speak block. So what do you want your content type to say? And so now let's run through a quick test on this and just get a sense of how that works.
Sure. Is that an idea or a to-do?
It's an idea. Oh, it's an idea. Oh. So my utterance didn't match there. So what did I have set for my utterances? Oh, none. It's a content type. There. So if I say it's an idea, it's an content type, because idea starts with a vowel, it will match that. So
Sure. Is that an idea or a to-do?
it's an idea.
What do you want your idea to say?
So there we go. I've captured content type, and we move on to the next turn in the conversation. So each interaction here, question, answer, or answer and question, is a turn in the conversation. So it comes from the idea of taking turns in a conversation. You say something, I say something, you say something, you respond and say something else, I respond and say something back to you. So each kind of back and forth is considered a turn. And really, jumping back into the example project we've got here, you can see this whole conversation just gets mapped out in that flow. So is that an idea or a to-do? And then they answer, okay, what should it say? Then in this, we're capturing what we want the content to be. Then it's like, okay, I heard the content, and it just replays the content. Is that correct? Yes or no. If they say yes, they move on to the next turn. If they say no, they go back and edit what they previously said. Should I tag this with a category? They can provide a tag, or they can just say no and skip that. Should I mark this as a priority? They can provide a priority number or say no and skip that. All right, and then it just reiterates everything that we've heard. Should I save this? And the user says yes or no, and prompts them if they want to add another note. So let's take a run through this entire sample dialogue, just built out in the happy path where everything goes right and we capture all the information in a very linear way. So if you have this template in front of you, the idea here is that you're able to kind of drag the start block down through each example that we're going to run through to test it out so that you can see how the whole interaction takes place. So
Is this an idea or a to-do?
it's an idea. You can set whether you want a text input or voice input on the prototype tab here. So I want a voice. It's an idea.
Okay, what should it say?
Add Google Analytics to the marketing website.
Okay, I heard. Add Google Analytics to the marketing website. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Should I tag this with a category?
Marketing.
Should I mark this as a priority?
It's a 4.
Okay. I'm adding Add Google Analytics to the marketing website to your idea list, tagged with marketing and a priority of a 4. Should I save this?
Yes. Yes.
Done. Want me to add another note?
No. And so there you can see.
See you later.
So we've built out this happy path represented in the sample dialog here. We have just using speak blocks and choice blocks. We're figuring out what category or what list it needs to go into, what the content of the note is, what category it belongs to, and what the priority level is for it. So that's kind of the first step in actually building your conversation. You can really construct it pretty straightforward using speak blocks and choice blocks. In setting up all of these choice blocks, what you're really doing is building out the interaction model. I talked about this modal previously, but over here in your interaction modal in the bottom left, you're able to see here's all of the intents that I've created for this project, for that flow there. And I can see, what are the utterances used to trigger that? And what are the slot values that I need to fill or could fulfill within that intent? So I know that, just as an example, I know when I'm asking for the category, it needs to match either analytics, design, development, or marketing. But priority number can just be any numeral, any number that the person provides. Note type is either a customer to do. And then the one tricky part here is for the note itself, because a note could be anything, it doesn't fit into one of Alexa's pre-built categories. And it's going to be impossible to define what are all of the custom custom slot responses that you get for what the note is. So a little trick in Voiceflow is just to use the movie intent, because movies really can be any wild name. This is the best way to capture a user's slot or user's response when they have something that's could be wild, could mean anything. So any note is going to get captured by that movie slot. All right, so we've got this basic happy path flow built out. And now the second kind of aspect to that is making it a bit more, making your conversational experience a bit more sophisticated. So this is, by definition, this happy path is it's designed as a very system-led design. The system asks the user a question, or the skill asks the user a question, and the user can only respond with one of the predefined intents that you've designed into the skill. That's, it's useful in a lot of scenarios where you've got, you've got like an ordering flow and there's a fairly linear process, but a lot of skills that you're going to be designing or building in Voiceflow are going to have a bit more of an organic flow to it. And so you want to enable the user to be able to drive the conversation how they see fit. And a great way to do that is by utilizing dialog management. So with dialog management, you're defining the rules that are required for an intent to get fulfilled. So when I say add details to a note to my Alexa skill, it says, okay, these are the rules, these are the slots that need to get fulfilled in order to successfully fulfill that intent and move on in the skill. So some of the things we'll look at just in this overview are the prompt step, the intent steps, and the dialog manager. So within this, as opposed to using the choice step, I'm instead using the prompt step. And so the prompt step is basically the prompts will stop your skill and listen for a user to say something that's going to match an intent. So this means, it's different from the choice step, because the choice step's only looking for whatever options you've got. So the only answer I could give this one, or the answers I could give on this step when I hit this choice block are yes or no. Anything else is just going to reprompt me to say yes or no. But in this case, I'm listening for any of the available intents on the project. And that creates kind of a much more useful experience, because it's not so much the skill tells the user to do something and then the user responds. It's more about the skill making itself available for the user and then waiting to hear what the user wants to do and guiding the conversation from there. So you want to use prompt steps if you've got more of a user-led conversation designed to your skill. And then in partnership with the prompt step, you're going to want to use intent blocks. And so the intent blocks, they contain all of the same content that you'd find in the choice block, the same intents that you've created in your choice block. As you can see here, so I've got my note content. What do you want to see? This is me just capturing the note. So when I hit this intent, it's just going to capture whatever I say. If I want to do add details, if the user says add some detail at any point when there's an open prompt, it's going to route them to this path of the conversation. And so this allows for a more stateful experience, because if the user's more familiar with your skill, they don't need to hear every step over and over. They can actually, provide all of the information up front, as opposed to kind of walking through this whole flow. When I'm adding my notes with this skill, I can just provide all of the necessary information up front and be done with it. I can fulfill all my slots in one or two utterances and get through the step that way. So this is the exact same skill we had above, just organized differently using prompts and interaction steps, intent steps to manage that experience. So if I run through a demo of this one, you'll see it's the exact same flow, just handled differently.
Go ahead.
Add Google Analytics to the website.
Want to review it, add details, or save it?
Save it.
Want to review it, add details, or save it?
Save it.
Okay, saved. Let me know if you want to add another one.
So that's just a different approach to conversation design. And so what you're doing, in order to make sure that you're getting all of the information you need efficiently to get to a successful outcome for the user, you're going to want to use the Dialog Manager functionality. And so that's on any intent step and in the choice step itself too. But within this intent, I can say, here, actually use the add details intent. So within this intent, here's the utterances that someone can say to trigger it. Details, add some details, I need some details. But also they could say add analytics, priority of 4, and category of to do.
Hey, Rob, any
Yes?
chance that you can make the screen a little bit larger?
Sure.
Awesome, thanks.
Oh yeah, sorry. I guess I'm sharing my whole screen. All right, here. Let's just go full. Oh. There we go. Is that big? As big as possible?
Much better, thanks.
All right, sorry about that. Cool. So just jumping back into this example. So as we run through it, or just ran through it, on the add details function here, with those slots that are included in these utterances, you can define those as required or not required. And what that's going to do, if it's required and it's not filled, that slot doesn't get filled, that when the person triggers this intent, it's going to follow up with them. It's going to prompt them using a slot prompt to fill that slot value. And so if I need to know for adding details what the category is, then I make that required. And then if I hit this in add details intent in my conversation, and I don't provide a category, it's going to follow up with me just to make sure it has all the required information to move along. So an example of that in practice is,
Go ahead.
add Google Analytics to the website.
Want to review it, add details, or save it?
So I'm going to hit the add details intent, add details,
What category should I tag this with?
analytics.
What number priority?
It's a 4,
Is this an idea or a to-do?
an idea. So there we go. It went through and it filled all of those slots that I have defined as mandatory for that. So with dialogue management, you can have, you can have a less linear conversation that the user can kind of navigate themselves through, but you can still ensure that you're getting all of the required information in order to complete the task that your skill is designed to complete. So I can't create a to-do in my to-do list if I don't have those details. So when this gets hit, it's making sure that I'm getting those slots filled. All right. So that's kind of the basics of dialogue management. So now I've got my happy path created, and I've actually kind of revised it to be a more interactive experience with my users. So now I want to take a look at conversation repair. So a happy path covers off purely that use case where everything goes right and the user doesn't say anything incorrect or miss any information. And that's not the real world. And so you really need to, when you're designing a skill, you need to start thinking about then what conversation repair is for that skill. And so it's when the user falls off the happy path, how are you getting all the necessary information to bring them back onto that happy path? So in that example above, if I provide a note and if I add a note here, for the purposes of the demo, I have multiple skills housed on one canvas here, and they're all sharing intents. So I need to quickly unshare those intents, because if I hit an intent, it's gonna trigger the first instance of it, but I want to hit this flows. So in this case, this is the note content. This is read. This is detail. And this is my save intent. All right, cool. So in this flow, when I provide a note, the system then says, do you want to review it, add details, or save it? And so I've given the option for them to just save it. If the user, when this intent blocks, when we hit this intent block, the user then says, save the note. Well, I know I need that certain types of information before I can save it. So one of the error paths that exists in this version of it is you can save the skill without providing a category for it. And so that's going to break because it's not going to know which of my to-do lists to send it to. Is it going to my ideas list or my to-do list? So you want to think about adding repair paths that are going to catch those types of error cases and bring, and repair them so that the user's getting to that successful conclusion. So in this scenario, the repair path, it's not adding all the category, all of those additional slots. It's just going to get the note type so that it knows which list to send it to. So I'll run through an example of how that works.
Go ahead.
Add Google Analytics to the website.
Want to review it, add details, or save it?
Save it.
What list will I save this to?
It's an idea.
Okay.
All right, so it saved it there to my ideas list. It asked it, and the way that I do this, and a lot of the repair paths are handled, is there's a couple items. One is using conditions, so you're able to set conditions against user variables. So, or the slots that they've provided. And so in this case, I'm using a condition block. And what I'm setting in the condition block is if the note type equals 0, so if they haven't provided a note type for me, if they haven't told me whether it's an idea or a to-do, going for the idea list or the to-do list, then send them down this repair path here. Make it red so you know it's a repair path. If they do have that note type filled, if that says idea or to do, then just send them to keep them on that happy path and say, okay, saved. So that's one of the primary ways that you're going to build repair paths into your skill is, look through your happy path. Where are all the points that someone could fall off this? Where could things go wrong? And build that in and build conditionals into your skill to capture those use cases, collect the required information, and then send them back into the happy path. The other item that you can use for repair is on your prompts or on your choice blocks. They're looking for the user to say something or the user to hit any intent that's active in your project if you're using a prompt step, or the specific ones that you've outlined in a choice block. And if you don't get that answer, you're going to want to reprompt your user. And so in this case, where the system's saying, do you want to review it, add details, or save it? If I say, change lists, well, that's not an intent available for it to hit. So the system's going to want to reprompt the user, and you can define what that reprompt is. So it's saying you can review it, you can add details, or save it. And I say, no, change lists. It's like, please choose to review or add details or save. And so you can have escalating reprompts that you can use to provide more and more context for the user about what the available responses are at any prompt or any choice, to make sure that they have the context required to get through that path in the flow. So, if it's very obvious, maybe you don't need reprompts, but it's really best practice to define some reprompts and make them context specific. So my reprompts aren't going to be the same when I'm using on this turn in the conversation after I've collected the notes content, as it would be where I'm prompting after add details. You want to contextualize it because the user's context is different at those steps. All right, so that's how you repair the conversation. The next item that you're going to want to look at is then how do you add context in your conversation? So in all of these examples we've run through, there is one flow created for every single user. Every user, regardless of who they are, where they're from, what they've done, is going to get the same experience. But that's not necessarily going to be a good experience for everybody because, for example, a first-time user might enjoy this more heavy-handed approach where you walk through every single question you could possibly ask them to create a to-do, versus this second use case where they can just provide you a to-do and be done with it. So that's probably a better use case or a better design for somebody who's used the app once or twice before. So you can build that context directly into your project where, based on the user, their situation of use. So the user, what do we know about them? How many times have they used this? What information have we previously gotten from them in their previous interactions with our skill? If I know your phone number, I'm not going to ask for your phone number again because I'm already going to have that information. Situation of use, a weather skill is going to rely on location information a lot more, and be able to provide different content based off of that, or a different user experience, and also system data. So if you're building a voice interface or a voice skill that plugs into any external third-party systems, you've got user databases, you've got APIs, building that information into your project so that you can provide conditional paths or conditional user experiences for all of the different types of user contexts that people are going to have. So I'm going to give you the most basic example as part of this, which is one we talked about above, which is if it's are they a new user or are they an existing user? If they're a new user, I'm going to give them that happy path flow that walks them through every single step, because that's going to help them build an understanding of what's doable with this skill. If they're an existing user, if they've had more than one session on our on your skill, then send them down that existing user path. They know what to do, and they don't need the full drawn out interaction. So sessions, there's a number of kind of built-in variables into Voiceflow. You can find all the variables in your interaction model menu as well. So you've got built-in variables here, but then every slot that you create can also be used as a variable. So if you want to create conditional paths based off of someone creating a high priority note, like I'll add this to your to-do list, and you also want me to text it to you. You could, for example, build a conditional path where any high priority note given has a different user experience. And then, so that's the one function here, these condition steps we reviewed. Another important one is flow steps. So I'm not going to get too in depth into flows, but really flows are kind of containers for different parts of your user experience, different parts of your conversation design. And so they have kind of a localized context so that the things that, the intents that happen within this, it's gonna look for intents within this flow first before laddering up to the main layer, to your primary root flow in the project to match that intent. So it's really useful if you do want to provide different user experiences, because you can use the same intents, but have them trigger different steps in your skill. So for this one, that's just going to trigger my new user flow, and then if my session is greater than 1, it's going to trigger my existing user flow, which is the second example we walked through there. So just to give you a demo of how that works in practice, we've got, all right.
Go ahead.
All right, so on this, you can see that my sessions variable is 2 because I've already run 2 sessions here. So it's matching that, it's saying, okay, his sessions were greater than 1, send him down the existing user flow here. Now, if I wanted to test out what that experience looks like for a new user, for example, oops, go back, go to my prototype, and you can configure the variables for each test within this variable settings menu here on the prototype tab. So I want to set sessions to 0. It's a brand new user. All right.
Go ahead.
Oh. Let me try that again. Let's see here. All right, one more time. Oh, it's because I have sessions equals 1. There we go. So if sessions equals 1, first session, great, open. All right, new user path. So now it's taking me down my new user path. So you can see, again, you can create contextual experiences based off of the context that you do know about your users, and you can build that right into your project logic here. All right, now the last kind of piece to building this note-taking app is integrating with external systems. Right now, all of the information that I'm providing, this experience on the front end, or in my tests, it's just staying local to my project here. But I want to be able to send that data out to external systems. We have, we've got a number of a couple good options for that. Custom code, Google Sheets integration, Zapier integration, or an API block, and they allow you to kind of integrate with external systems of your choice to be able to pass through information that you've saved into variables in your project out to those external systems. So in in this flow here, I can just, when I hit the save intent down here, when I say, okay, I want to save it, I've got a Google Sheets integration steps set up here. And so what that looks like in the editor here is it's just kind of a pre-baked, letting you define what sheet you want to send it to, what rows, what values do you want to send to what columns. And so when I hit this block, it's going to pass through in this Google Sheet example here. It's going to pass through the timestamp variable, the note, the captured note, the category, the priority, and the note type. And so, so this is how, you know, I'm actually getting this information out of my skill. And then here, just to save time, I won't run the Google Sheets example. I will just kind of skip forward to the Todoist example. Boop. And so with the API block here, I've got an API step here, and I'm just hitting this webhook endpoint that Zapier provides me, and you can pass through hit a webhook on Zapier, and then you can connect it to any sort of skill that you've got. And I'm passing through category, priority information, and then the note content too as part of this JSON body. I'm not a developer, so this is kind of the extent of the integration that I can manage on my end, but because I'm able to hit Zapier, I can integrate my skill with you know, the 2,000 other apps available on Zapier. So just to run through a demo of what this looks like, the big finish on all this thing, details, just need to do read. No content. All right. Just need to rejig those utterances. All right. And I need to delete these. So here's my Todoist over here. So let's go back down to this flow. So it's going to run the exact same experience, except it's just going to pass that information through to Todoist when I'm done.
Go ahead.
Add Google Analytics to the website.
Want to review it, add details, or save it?
Add details.
What category should I tag this with?
Analytics.
What number priority?
It's a 4.
Is this an idea or a to-do?
It's an idea.
Okay, it's an idea. Tag analytics, priority of 4. Want to review it or save it?
Save it.
Okay, saved.
So
let me know if
there
you
it
want
is.
to add another one.
It appears on my list. Now the last thing I need to do, I've got my functioning note-taking app here. It's connected directly to my skill or to my to-do list here. I can upload that to Alexa. That's going to pass this skill, this project over into Alexa. And note type is used as both. Oh, okay. So I'd have to fix that before I do it, but I just use a duplicate name. Once I upload it to Alexa, I can test it live on my Alexa devices, on my Alexa app, and then submit it for certification. And I have my note-taking skill live. And that's the full kind of demo that I wanted to run through today. I'm cutting it short, so if there's any questions, I'd be happy to get into those now.
Want to read?
Emily? All right, where am I?
If anyone has any questions, feel free to use the Q&A section at the bottom, and we'll be happy to go through that. It looks like we have one that just came through from Oliver. can you export all the code that is generated into AWS Code Commit?
We do have an option to export code available for enterprise users currently. And what that does is it's exporting your whole project diagram. So the interaction model, the project metadata, and the diagram of your skill. So what are the action, or what's the sequential order of actions, and where does it go next if X state exists? And so that is exportable. Whether that's directly exportable to AWS, as you've said, I'm not certain. I'm probably not the best person to answer that. Have to ask Ty for that, or our Eng team for that.
We have another question from Joel specifically about the to-do list. So the one that you're using, he's wondering how you link the notes to the desktop app. Are you able to share what application that you're using, or share the link in that for the viewers afterwards?
Yes. So my guys got moved here. So the I've linked to the Zapier Zap I'm using right here. And so if you create a Zapier account, you can set up a webhook, and all that's doing is providing me with a webhook endpoint, a custom webhook URL. And then I'm using the API block in Voiceflow to send a post request to that endpoint. And then that's passing the note I just gave in my prototype test here, and that people will give in your skill off into your Todoist or whatever you set it up to be linked to on Zapier.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. So it looks like we're just about at time. Oh, we have one last one. How do you check a slot value with the pre-existing set of values?
How do you check? Oh, so if we're using like an Alexa airport value or airport slot type, and how do we know what's on that list? Is that the question?
Yes, but customized.
Yes. I don't have a good answer for that. I don't think, we looked into this previously, and Amazon's kind of closely guarded about what slot values are built into their lists of pre-existing slots or predefined slots. So I don't think we can at this time, but I haven't looked into that, or we haven't looked into that in the last kind of 6 months or so. So it might be different now, but as of last check, no.
Awesome. All right. So with that, I'm going to share a few resources for everyone on here. So thank you so much, Rob, especially for walking us through that. For everyone that attended today, we will be sending out a recording of what we went through today, so that way you'll be able to play it back and build along with it. We'll also be sending the link to download the project so you can copy that into your Voiceflow account. And for anyone who's curious about more ways that you can get started, would highly recommend checking out voiceflow.com/tutorials for a list of different videos that you can go deeper on each section and really break that down on what level of ability you want to master. Beyond that, tomorrow, tune in with our next session of Fix It Hour with Nico. We're going to be going a little bit deeper on how we can get more out of our API block, and we're going to be building some brand new things in preparation to basically inspire you over the holidays. So I would highly recommend joining that if you're curious, and really excited to introduce a next session in our AMAs with Sonia Talati, who is the senior conversation designer at Geico, who's going to be talking about what it takes to train your voice experience and really build that from the ground up. So tune in for that. That'll be made available on our events page later this afternoon. And if you're not already part of it, please join in on our conversation. We have over 7,500 amazing power users and voice enthusiasts available in this community, and we'd love to hear what you're building. So definitely check that out at bit.ly/VF community. And thank you so much for everyone that attended.